notice people are more open to the gospel now after tragedy?
It's tough, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you got all the questions that flood. If there is a God,
well, exactly.
where was he at?
Literally, like, our past life and our future life were all burning at one time. It was just the craziest day of my life.
There were 3 churches that completely burned down.
There's a totally fine home.
Yeah, that's right.
But on this side, I mean, it's like
that's
$5 million home gone.
That's the win. Well, these ones are going to be more than 5, but yes,
Okay.
you're right.
Most of the Palisades doesn't live in the Palisades. We're growing as a church. We're up 20% over last year.
I think a lot of the people in the community are starting to realize it's about the relationships and the people-to-people connections more so than our homes or even our buildings.
When everything that you were relying on to keep up a certain kind of identity is taken away from you, and you are forced to be dependent on other people and on God, when you are used to being the person everybody's dependent on, reveals some pretty big idols pretty quickly.
This has opened up opportunities for your church to help the community, right?
Our church is still standing, and we say that with great humility and thankfulness.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I feel like, okay, we've been given an opportunity.
My first Sunday was 2 days before the fire. I preached that Sunday in our sanctuary and haven't again since. So that Tuesday morning we were in this room. I was sitting in this chair at our very first staff meeting, and I noticed I had 2 staff members over here that were distracted, and I thought, I've lost them already. It's my first staff meeting, I've already lost them. And I kind of was like, hey, what's up? And they said, oh, there's smoke on the hill out the window here. And you know, if you live in Los Angeles, you're used to seeing smoke on hills. That's just part of life here. There's a lot of small wildfires that happen. And I kind of joked, I said, well, if it gets bigger, let me know. And about 10 minutes later, we got a text message saying, you got to evacuate. So we have a school, which you'll see here in a moment. We had 460 students at the school from TK, so 2-year-olds, all the way up to 8th grade. And we had to get them off campus. And so everybody, I said, all right, let's go. The church staff went down to go help the school, and we started to evacuate those students.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, let's go check out the sanctuary. And so you're a church planner. You were telling me that you moved from Seattle.
Yep. That's right.
We have that in common. So you were planning churches in probably one of the hardest places Seattle's a hard place alone.
Yeah.
But you were in, where the all the riots were during 2020, right? The Chaz Chop Zone where they kicked out the police.
Yep. So we planted in the fall of 2019.
Yeah.
And 6 months into our church plant, we got shut down for COVID. And our church was actually inside the autonomous zone.
Oh my goodness.
And we lived a few blocks away. And I thought, well, that's the craziest church experience I'll ever have. It's
also pretty amazing, salt and light being light in the darkness.
It was wild, for sure, yeah. So anyway, on this day, January 7th, we came out here, and I looked up because the fire started there up on the hill over the top of the building, and there was just a giant plume of smoke there, and I thought, oh, this is real.
Yeah.
And so we started evacuating kids first to the parking lot, and then we got further evacuated down to the fire station, eventually all the way down to the ocean, and then 3/4 of a mile
walking,
down.
You were saying.
Walking.
You guys had to
foot.
walk.
We had to bail on all our cars. Some crazy stuff. So Palisades Drive here that we're on got completely backed up because everyone's coming out of the Highlands where the fire was, but meeting Sunset Boulevard, which is a big thoroughfare, and everyone's trying to get out.
Yeah.
So massive traffic jam. So I don't know if you saw in the news, they had big tractors. They're pushing cars.
I remember seeing those videos.
That was out in front of our church.
Wow.
So I was parked here, had to bail. We get all the way down to the ocean, and I get a phone call from my assistant, who I barely knew at this point. Like, I don't know.
This is like week 2.
This is day 2.
Day 2, yeah.
So she calls and says, hey, I'm stuck in traffic. There's fire on either side of me. What do I do? Wow. And she had gone up because she was dog sitting one of our elders' dogs. And so she's like, I got this dog, I got all this stuff, what do I do? I said, pull over, I'll run back up, I'll meet you at the church, and I'll help you. And so she's got this 14-year-old black lab that does not want to walk all the way to the beach. And so I have to pick up this dog and carry this dog as far as I can carry it, put it down, drag it as far as it'll go, pick it back up. We did that all the way down to the ocean. So just all these little moments of craziness. So when we left campus, the fire had come all the way down this hill and had hopped over the canyon, and so it was all across this hill as well. So we were completely surrounded by fire by the time we left campus. And so I thought, well, it's done. It's gone. I mean, it was a raging fire. It was wild. So we got all the way down to the Bel Air Bay Club, which is about a mile from here, and got all the kids to their parents eventually. And me and our head of school turned and tried to come back to campus just to see what was left. And the police wouldn't let us within half a mile. And it was smoke. We couldn't hardly breathe. I mean, I was already thinking, like, how are we even going to breathe up there? But they wouldn't let us close. And so I turned around and walked all the way to Santa Monica. And eventually, I mean, what's kind of wild is there were two fires that day. Here, the Palisades fire, and then there was the Eaton fire out in Altadena that was equally as destructive. We live right in between the two. And so our family was affected by the Eaton fire. There, my kids' school, we were living out there still because we hadn't moved over here yet.
So you're like having to worry about students and your church and then your family. How far away are they?
Well, they were about 20 miles.
20 miles away.
And their school got shut down because of the other fire that day. So literally, like, our past life and our future life were all burning at one time. It was just the craziest day of my life. So,
that's incredible. Well, and so it's still standing.
It is.
But there is a construction zone back behind here.
So 2 days later, so that was Tuesday. So Thursday, we drove back in. The police had made a huge barricade, and so my wife dropped me off at the northernmost point we were able to go. And I literally had to sneak in. I will admit, I stretched the truth to some police officers to get back in. I literally snuck past another group of police officers. And then when I got to the parking lot, there was a fire truck in the parking lot. And I went up and said, hey, I'm the pastor. Can I go? And to his credit, he goes, no, you cannot go in. And he turned his back. And I was like, okay, I get it. So I came in, and there was water everywhere from the sprinkler system. And I walk into our sanctuary, which I'll show you here in a moment, and smoke everywhere, water everywhere. The sprinklers had been going for days, for 2 days at that point. And so there was 3 to 4 feet of standing water, big hole in the roof. And it was like, oh my gosh. So the good news was most of the campus was generally fine. In fact, most of the damage that we had on campus was water damage from the sprinklers going off. And so we had, there's a spot up here on a balcony where a piece of wood caught fire, like a background for a theater production caught fire, triggered the sprinklers.
Because it was so windy, so there was flames everywhere. Just flying in the air.
Flying everywhere. Crazy. So like branches would catch fire and blow over and catch fire here. And so the sprinklers caused most of our damage. But there was some damage over further north on the school property from some fire, and then a lot of ash and smoke damage. And so it took us 6 months 8 months really to remediate everything. For the school to come back. And the church, we're in the gym now, but the sanctuary is going to be
let's go check out the sanctuary.
Let's go see that, because that's the dramatic stuff.
How many congregants in your church lost their home or displaced?
So between the church and the school, about 200 of our families lost their home.
Really? Wow.
We are about 90% displaced. So the vast majority of our families were forced to leave. And I would say maybe 20% have come back at this point.
Really?
The rest are still living in other parts of
LA
or Nashville.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. People left for sure.
That's interesting, because being in Nashville, I mean, the joke, you meet someone new and it's like, are you from LA? But there's actually people coming just because of the fires even.
Oh yeah,
Wow.
for sure. Yeah. Some of our staff members ended up moving. So yeah, when I walked back in on that Thursday, there was a big hole in the roof. This was all full of water here. And it was still actively dripping, and they thought there was still a fire in the wall that was just smoldering. They couldn't quite get to it.
Yep.
And so then over the next 8 months, we had to tear it all out and put a temporary roof on, tear out basically anything soft. So all the pews, all the carpet, all the drywall, anything that could absorb water or smoke had to be ripped out. And you can smell it. It still smells pretty strongly.
It smells.
Smoke.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How many other churches were affected?
All of them, to one degree or another.
Yeah.
So I think there's 5 or 6 that completely burned down.
Really?
And I think 2 that experienced a similar level of damage to us. One that was slightly less, Presbyterian Church. They're actually back in their building now.
Okay.
But yeah, it's 6,000 domiciles were burned down in the fire. So it's the vast majority.
Yeah.
There's nobody in the Palisades that was untouched by this, either smoke and water damage or actually just losing their home.
Yeah, that and then knowing countless people who were affected dramatically.
Yeah, I mean, as you walk around the campus, most of the people that you'll see are not living in there.
Yeah. Well, and so one of the reasons I reached out to you was, the YouTube channel is called Salty Christians, and I want to inspire Christians to be salt and light. And it's easy to look at a situation like this. I was just driving around the Palisades, and it's like, I can't imagine. But there's surely stories of hope of Christians who have been salt and light. So I'd love to hear any examples of how your church has been able to do it, or other stories you've heard of Christians who are doing what we're called to be, salt and light in these times of tragedy.
Well, what's amazing, and this is me just singing other people's praises, but we had dozens of people reach out in the immediate aftermath. What can we do? How can we help? And we're going to send clothes and send food and all of this. And it's the first time I have ever been, and I say my church has been the victim of something like this. It's like a hurricane or a flood, the North Carolina floods, Katrina, all the things. It's like, okay, we can help because we're not affected by it. So initially I thought, we could clothing drive, we could do food. And I thought, we got nowhere to, where would we do it? We got nowhere to be, like our place burned down. And so I thought, well, the only thing that we can do that really nobody else can do, or that we're uniquely positioned to do, is to get money to people. Like we know names and phone numbers and addresses.
You said 200 people in your church.
200 families that have been affected by this. And so we started to raise money, and it's mostly external. And we ended up raising $550,000 that went directly to people who lost their homes. And so what was kind of fun was I hadn't met most of those people. This was my second day. So the very first time I interacted with some of these people was me texting them saying, hey, this is Pastor Justin from Calvary. I promise I'm not a scammer, but if you give me your bank account information, I will send you money.
That's unreal.
And it was unbelievable. And so most of the people that I got to meet, that's how I met them. And so they'd call me because they're like, I don't believe you. And and I would say, hey, it's really me. We've raised this money. We would like to give you $5,000, $10,000, whatever it is. And we just wired it to them, no questions asked, and said, because they all had to leave all their clothes, all their bedding. They didn't have mattresses. They didn't have anything because nobody thought it was that serious. They thought, we'll be out of our house for a day. They'll get the fire under control. We'll come back. Nobody took anything of value. And so they lost everything. And so we were able to just cut checks, $5,000, $10,000, just get what you need. Go buy a bed for your kid. And so we gave away every single dollar that was brought in. It was amazing.
So it's a year after. I mean, I see there's construction happening. I mean, people are coming back. Are there? I mean, there's people who are also leaving, but maybe they're already planning on leaving, and this was like the final straw. Or who knows?
As you might imagine, it's a mixed bag. There's folks that are so committed to the Palisades, they're not going anywhere.
Oh, it's beautiful here. A couple of these drives, it's like you come over a bluff, and there's the Pacific Ocean in downtown LA.
It's beautiful. It's a great place to live. and they're not going anywhere, and they're committed to rebuilding.
Yeah.
There's some folks that are, because of maybe age and stage, it doesn't make sense for them to rebuild, and so they'll move on. And there's others that just, they've had to make a new life somewhere, just in Playa del Rey or in Santa Monica or something like that, and they just have to move on, So it's definitely a mixed bag. But we came back to campus as a church on September 7th.
Okay.
And we're in the gym. We have a gym, which is a blessing that we have a second place to meet. And it's been awesome. We did a big homecoming weekend, that first weekend back. We actually produced a documentary, a short kind of 30-minute documentary about telling stories.
Is this on YouTube?
It is.
Okay.
It's on YouTube.
I will link it up then on this video.
It's great. Yeah, it tells 5 or 6 stories of people that lost homes.
That's great.
And were affected by it. And so we had a premiere screening on that Friday night. That was awesome. And then had our first Sunday back on September 7th. And so that has been, I think, really healing for people. To be able to be back. We're the only church, we were at the time the only church meeting in the Palisades. Since then the Presbyterian Church has joined. But it was us being able to say, we're here, we're not going anywhere. The church is back, the school is back. We're going to be a part of rebuilding this.
Is there like counseling you're offering to people, like PTSD? Are there people have PTSD with something like this?
Yeah, so that was one of the really cool things. Immediately after the fire, Saddleback reached out, and Andy, their lead pastor, reached out and said, "How can we help?" And I happen to know they have a really strong kind of counseling ministry there at Saddleback, and they sent counselors up every Sunday for 6 or 8 weeks just to be available to our people, and that was incredible. So, that's been a big part of it. Even now. We just started Advent on Sunday, and this is going to be the first holiday for a lot of these families outside their home.
Yeah.
And
then also like a couple weeks to the anniversary of it. So wow.
Yeah. So from now until January 7th, we are paying special attention to the hurt and the sadness and the longing that people are experiencing. And so our Advent series is about longing for peace and hope and joy and love, and all that they've lost during this season. So even a year later, in the midst of trying to rebuild, trying to raise money, trying to get back to normal, all those things, like we're trying to pay attention to the fact that people are still experiencing grief and mourning a year later.
Yeah. What's God taught you through all this? What's like a takeaway that you've gotten from, there's got to be a lot.
God's providence in all of this, one of the things I was most nervous about taking this job is I'm a church planter. I've been a church planter my whole life, my whole ministry life. And this is a 77-year-old church.
Okay.
Established patterns, culture. And I was nervous that that was not going to be a great fit. I don't know how to lead a church of 77 years. And day one, we became a church plant.
Yeah.
I had to find a building. I had to set up and tear down. I had to reestablish culture. We had to, all the normal church planting stuff. And so God's providence, and everybody's kind of recognized it of like, he brought this church a church planter.
Yeah,
2
right
days
when they
before
needed it.
they were going to need a church plant. And so that's been amazing. The main thing though, it's just one of those gifts as a preacher. This is generally a pretty affluent area. LA in general is, West LA in particular, with the Palisades. And there is a pressure in areas like this to kind of keep up with the Joneses, to put on a facade of success. And when everything that you were relying on to keep up a certain kind of identity is taken away from you, and you are forced to be dependent on other people and on God, when you are used to being the person everybody's dependent on, reveals some pretty big idols pretty quickly.
Have people been more receptive to the gospel after this? That 100%. You can, you're talking about losing everything in your identity, and then you got to wrestle with, okay, God, why did this happen to me?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, no, so I think in the last year, I've preached on, suffering, pain, hope. a dozen times
Yeah,
maybe,
yeah.
because that's the recurring theme, how to make sense of this.
Well, and you're meeting people where they're at.
Yeah, well, I'm trying to.
Yeah.
And that's the question they're still trying to ask is like, how do we make sense of God putting us through all this? And how do we process that and mourn it and grieve it and all that? So, yeah, I mean, given the fact that most of the Palisades doesn't live in the Palisades, we're growing as a church.
Really?
We're up 20% over last year, even though nobody lives here. And so that I see that as a hunger for truth, for hope, and that people are looking for it.
Yeah, well, and as Christians, we know that everything of this world will go away.
Right.
But when it happens to you here on earth,
Yeah.
I think it forces you to go, well, who's my mate? Where did this, why am I here? All those big existential questions, right? And
100%. Yeah, it's one thing for those ideas to be ideas in the abstract.
Yes, exactly.
And then you walk in your home and it's all rubble.
Yeah.
And you go, oh, it's really gone. And you're forced to
But then
wrestle
I'm
with it.
sure there's a huge sense of gratefulness of I'm still alive.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I can't, I'm just,
It's the whole range of emotion.
yeah, because I'm just, I mean, I've seen some of those photos and videos of, going down Sunset Drive and, it looks apocalyptic.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so people had moments of going, am I going to make it through this?
Yep.
Well, anything else you want to share? How can people be praying for your church, the Pacific Palisades?
Yeah. I mean, some really practical things is we're going to have to raise a bunch of money to put all this back together. Insurance will cover some, but not most.
Really?
Yeah. And that's not just our problem.
That's
every
single person who lost a home. Is that why I see so many homes for sale?
Yes.
People are just saying, I can't afford it. Wow.
Can't afford it. So yeah, the economics on rebuilding are hard, no matter what your position is.
Yeah.
In the last couple of years, insurance premiums went through the roof here because of increasing wildfire danger. And so most people are underinsured, and that includes the church. And our premiums 10x'd over a 2-year span.
Oh my gosh.
Literally 10x'd. And so we had to reduce coverage.
And that's before the fires.
Before the fires.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So we, insurance will cover some, but we will have to raise quite a bit, millions of dollars.
Really?
And that's, again, not just for us, that's true for a lot of people trying to rebuild their homes. And so that's a very practical thing. I think on a more spiritual level, like the temptation is once things start to go back to normal that you stop thinking about God.
Yeah.
And the
your reliance
visceral,
goes away.
Yeah, the visceral fear and anxiety and uncertainness goes away, and then you stop thinking about it. And so I'm really hopeful, and we as a staff have started to pray that 2026 is going to be a real evangelistic harvest for our church and for the other churches in the area, that 2025 was this kind of leveling of everybody's life, and I think a preparation. And we're really praying towards God, save people through this, and especially in this next year.
Wow. Well, I'm telling my channel
Yeah.
viewers to be praying for you guys. And
Please.
I think it's interesting too, because I think across America, just with all the different things that have happened this year, even if you didn't lose your home, I think there's just from Charlie Kirk thing to the economy's iffy, politics.
Yep.
Like people are going, why am I putting my hope in all this stuff? And a lot of, I think it's good that people are wrestling with it.
Yeah.
But now we need the churches to be salt and light.
Yes.
And a place where you can come hear the truth.
Yeah.
And
Well, and I have felt emboldened.
Good.
Because of the opportunity. And
there's probably a little more urgency too.
oh yeah.
In a sense.
Well, when you're preaching in peacetime, in normal times, you have to establish the crisis, right? That's first part of the sermon, is establish the what is the situation we're facing.
It's same within marketing. What's the problem?
Exactly.
Here's the solution.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so when you get to skip that part, because you just have to look around and go, we all see the crisis, right?
Driving here, we saw burnt down homes.
Exactly.
We're reminded every single day.
Or you turn on the news and you see assassinations and riots and all the stuff we've seen. I don't have to work real hard to establish the craziness of the situation.
Yeah.
We just finished a series in Genesis last week that we called Rooted in Reality. And the whole idea was the world's crazy, the Bible is normative. That's reality. And we want to root ourselves in what is true in the midst of an absolutely chaotic and crazy world. And man, that bore some fruit.
I bet.
To just have like a foundation of reality in the midst. I mean, you add like AI and everything that's going on with that, and you're like, I don't even know. Every time I see a picture now, I go, is that real?
I know. Well, the whole, this is a totally different topic from this video, but truth. You know, I'm working on getting some AI people because, you know, as Christians, we're talking about truth, and now everything in our world we're questioning, is that true? Did that really happen? It is a very, it's an interesting territory for us to be in. I mean, we're already in a kind of post-Christian, post-biblical truth world. Now the whole culture is like, and what kind of anxiety does that bring on people?
Well, and they go together, right? Again, this is a separate podcast probably, but they go together in the sense of like when you have a society that's no longer founded on the truth, and it's kind of, it was already kind of like, you know, just not a solid foundation biblically, and now you add AI and some of the politics and all the, you know, misinformation, all this, you go, well, we don't even have a foundation to compare it to, right? Like,
but we know something's off.
I hope we do.
I hope we do. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for what you're doing here in the Palisades. And again, I'm going to tell people down below, you can watch the documentary you guys did. I'll put a link even for I mean, who knows? There are going to be people watching this who didn't give a year ago, and they want to help churches who are trying to rebuild here in the Palisades.
Yeah,
so
be awesome.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Matt.
You're the pastor at this church. You were just telling me that there is like a bunch of just churches really close by here. So yours was not affected by the fire, right?
Well, our church wasn't damaged by the fire, but we were certainly impacted.
Yeah.
We're kitty corner to Palisades High School, Pali High, on Sunset Boulevard.
Okay.
And we have a Presbyterian church right next door, as well as a synagogue on the other side.
Yeah.
So the synagogue and our facility were protected during that time, but the Presbyterian church was lost.
Okay. And that one is right across the street over here. It burned down,
where you see Verizon, the telephone pole.
That's where they were.
That actually used to be a bell tower. That was where the steeple to the church
walk up there real quick. How many people in your congregation were impacted by this?
The whole community. I imagine we have upwards of 25,000 people.
Yeah.
And everybody had to evacuate. In our community, I would say 12 of our families.
Yeah.
We have a smaller congregation, but 12 lost their homes. I would say probably 1/3 of our congregation will not be able to return. A lot of the houses of faith, the same stories being told by many of the clergy, that a lot of the children of their members came in and relocated mom and dad. We sometimes look at it as a decision that God made for the folks to it was a forced choice. They didn't really have to think about it.
Yeah.
Now was the time that they're going to move into maybe assisted living. Hello, or into some sort of maybe in with the kids.
You got fans waving at you. Well, and you were just telling me, wow, the lighting is going to be a little tough here with the sunset, but this has opened up opportunities for your church to help the community, right?
Well, Matt, our congregation, I would say, was the only Christian congregation, maybe the only house of faith that was viable initially. Now, a couple others since the day have opened up and traffic and activities are occurring. But our congregation has really been a viable space for the community to come and continue their activities.
Yeah, because like there's a bunch
so
of
many groups.
Boys basketball right now. It looks like they're using your basketball gym. And
the varsity basketball team's here now on Tuesdays. Yep, and AA is coming in. They're the best. They come in on Friday nights, Monday nights, Sunday morning. We've got some groups from Pepperdine University and UCLA. The youth groups the college kids are coming over for their worship services on Tuesdays. So quite frankly, we've had more connection maybe with the community over this last year than maybe we've had over the last several years. It's been One of the Jewish synagogue rabbis said, look, sometimes what we think is a blessing becomes a curse, and what we think is a curse becomes a blessing. And that's really what we're realizing now. Yeah.
Well, I love that you guys are making your space available, and just there's so many seeds being planted through this.
Yeah, in your ministry, is salt and seed?
Yeah,
Is
salt
that-
and light.
Salt and light.
Yeah.
Salt
Well,
and light.
and
Yeah.
what's interesting, so city on a hill, being light of the world, and here we are, we're kind of on a high spot. Like, we've got a cell tower, a temporary cell tower over here.
Yeah.
There's a T-Mobile one in your parking lot. There's an AT&T one over here.
Yeah.
And then there's the church, and the very top shining like as we should.
Yeah. Historically, I guess you would say congregations or churches have been placed on those high points. But many buildings grow up bigger and taller than the old churches and cathedrals. But ultimately, your light and your salt, it's in you as a person, more so than your building.
Amen to
and
that.
I think a lot of the people in the community are starting to realize it's about the relationships and the people-to-people connections more so than our homes or even our buildings. Even though those are incredible losses, the loss of life is even far greater.
Things come into perspective more when you realize how temporary the stuff here on earth is. When it can just in a second burn away, you realize, wow, life is precious. And you think of things of the eternal more.
You do, and you've really touched on an interesting point. When the Palisades started to open up and people could return to get things that they wanted to take out and salvage, it was really interesting that what some of the people grabbed and they reached for. And then also hearing stories about the things from the families that lost everything.
Yeah.
They only, over the weeks and months that carried on, realized, I'm looking for this and it's gone. It's not there. So that's a lot of the grief that we're working through with families, and we're praying for those folks. And they're given opportunity, as you say, to be a light at those times.
That's great.
Yeah, so these spots right here, this is George, and this office over here is George's office. And George is our maintenance guy. He's probably been the maintenance guy. He's 80 years old, and he's been here all of his life.
Yeah.
George, I think, graduated from the first graduating class at Pali High School. Wow. So, and he's become our local hero. We believe that George was able to save the building from the fire. He was here spot checking with the hose, putting out, because what was happening is the palm trees were catching on fire. It was a windy day, and all of the sparks were blowing all over the place, and that's how many of the houses were catching on fire, not in a line, but sporadically. And George was on our campus that day doing what he could do to save our campus. He even tried to help the Presbyterian Church campus, but that just didn't work out. But his place he had to move out of, and these are some of the plant pots from his balcony. But so he no longer, when you're asking about what took place, all of our members, everyone had to move out. My wife and I moved out, but there are so many things that were salvageable and many things that were not. But these pots, so he's giving them away if you wanted to. All of this was saved. So all of these very fine dining restaurants, fine shopping centers, but look on the right side of the street, it burned. Now the pharmacy stayed, but behind the pharmacy was Ralph's grocery store, which completely burned down. Right next to Ralph's grocery store was Corpus Christi, the Catholic church and school. It burned down.
So why did the village over here not burn again?
The village did not burn because the builder had hired private fire trucks
and his name
firemen.
Is Caruso.
And that's Mr. Rick Caruso.
Okay.
And he was able to protect all of the shops, the restaurants, the movie theater, everything in his village he protected. But all of these right next door, and all of the homes right next to the village, as you can see here, we call this the Alphabet Street. And it's an older section of the community. If you take a left here, Corpus Christi is right over there, but a left here, you will see this is the Alphabet Street. It's a narrow street, older homes, and one after the next caught on fire. So most of the homes in here as we drive through. This is the fire station, of course.
Oh,
so
wow.
and it's all stone and brick. So these homes are right next to the fire
Yeah.
station, and you can see these lots here burned down. These were all magnificent homes. I would say probably $3 to $5 million homes in here.
And there's one being rebuilt.
So yeah, and that's another story. The permitting is taking forever. If you have a 2,000 to 3,000 square foot home, it's about $70,000 to $80,000
Wow.
for the permit, just for the permit.
Yeah.
So there were talks about widening these streets, but clearly it looks like they're just going to rebuild
Just gonna start
the
rebuilding.
homes right where they're at. You've got some homes going up over here, but from what I understand, 10% of the population are seniors. There's a huge gap financially between some that were not insured at all, some that were simply underinsured. And so, and just going through the process of rebuilding, it's just a terrible process for them at that stage in life.
Yeah.
And then probably 1/3 of the folks just are not going to be able to return. The cost, so if you're underinsured, not insured, that's one problem. The next problem is, of course, the cost to rebuild.
Yeah. You displaced then for a little while?
Our family was.
Yeah.
My kids had come from Michigan, my older kids, they were visiting. We were out having lunch. We saw the smoke coming down the hill,
Yeah.
thought it would be put out. We thought we'd just drive around and then come back. We were never able to return. So we had no clothes like everybody else. We were not ready for that.
Yeah.
We spent a couple months in hotels, and then finally my wife and I came back quite early because by God's grace, our church, as well as the parsonage, the
Yeah.
home the pastor lives in, was spared.
Wow.
So we were able to come back in March.
Yeah. What's been the biggest thing God's been teaching you during this season?
So there's one verse, I think it's in Psalm 145, verses 14 and 15, that I've been turning to for a lot of occasions. And it's this, the eyes of all look to you, O Lord, and you give them their food in proper season. You open your hands and you satisfy the desires of every living creature. Just the idea that everybody looks to God sooner or later. That passage is so powerful. The eyes of all look to you, O Lord. And then it says, you give them their food in proper season. So there's no one else who's going to give us what we need. God does.
Yeah.
And he does so in his time.
Yeah.
And that's the proper season. And I guess it's promises like that that I lean on to minister and console and encourage and give hope.
Do you notice people are more open to the gospel now after tragedy?
It's tough, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you got all the questions that flood.
Yeah.
If there is a God,
Well, exactly.
where was he at?
Where
was
was
he
he?
on vacation? And if there is a God and he was there, why did he allow this to happen? I mean, those are the typical, big questions. The Jobian question, why? Yeah. And so yeah, I think there is an opportunity, but the ministry is so, how do you say it, discreet. Everyone is different.
Yeah.
How they receive ministry.
Yeah.
So for us, our church immediately began to worship at the beach. So that same place I was at, Back to the Beach Cafe, the day of the fire, our church started worshiping there 2 weeks later at the Annenberg Community Beach House.
Okay.
And it was amazing. The gifts that flooded into our church from all over the country, all of the churches in our church body, other church bodies, they were sending us afghans, blankets, pillows, clothes, furniture, food, cash, whatever the church needed. And it was too much for us at the time.
Yeah.
So we distributed it to other community groups.
That's cool.
So that did give us a way to connect that we hadn't been able to connect before. And it is an interesting thing. The people that didn't lose their homes,
It is very interesting.
it's really hard for them to be posing as, I'm so thankful in front of their friends who lost their homes.
There's got to be like kind of that, what do they call it, survivor's guilt?
Yep.
A little bit
Yep.
of because I mean, right here.
But
let's
look at
see.
this. Yeah, these beautiful views.
Yeah.
But the homes aren't here.
And then across here, there's a totally fine home.
Yeah, that's right.
But on this side, I mean, it's like
that's
$5 million home gone.
That's the win. Well, these ones are going to be more than 5, but yes,
Okay.
you're right. And I just wanted to show you some of the homes. Well, most of the homes that overlook the ocean burned down. They're starting to return.
The fires came all the way over here.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's just a massive area. Like, I feel like I've.
And this is clean. I mean,
Yeah, yeah. I bet.
It was like a bomb, a war zone.
Yeah.
Right after the fire. But you can see all of the houses that were just decimated.
Oh, so there was homes all along.
Oh yeah, this whole, you can imagine every square inch, there were homes. Yeah, so that whole thing got decimated.
It's going to be years before
Yeah.
any of this comes back to any semblance of what it used to be. It may be completely different.
They are anticipating it's going to be completely different just because the repopulation is going to bring in a whole different type of individual or families. Yeah, and how do you make sure that I think the folks that are here, they want to retain and preserve what was here? Can we somehow go back in time and put it back the way it was?
Yeah.
And I think other interested parties are thinking, even foreign investors.
Yeah.
This community is a gem, and we have a different vision. So I think right now that's another prayer for the secular community and all of the leaders is, how do you come together and have a future?
Yeah. Well, you said that your church is a little older, right?
We've been here since 1946.
Okay. What does that look like for you as a church leader going?
You're right.
There's new families coming in, right?
You're right. Yeah, we've got to prepare for that. And we're excited about that, but we don't know what that looks like. I don't think the community knows yet what that looks like. Yeah. But we've got to be, I guess, what do they say, nimble, flexible? How do we say it? Your word is a lamp for my feet. Right here.
One day at a time.
Yeah. Right, today.
Yeah. Trust in God.
Yeah. Well, Matt, you'll have to come back.
I will.
In a year or two.
Exactly.
Yes. And what was interesting, too, is without the homes here and without the people here, because everyone vacated the community, the coyotes were coming down out of the mountains, running through the streets. So my wife and I, we came back early, and we would see all of the coyotes coming through the church parking lot, right down Sunset Boulevard. I took so many pictures.
That is
crazy. Beautiful. Yeah. Which is nice to see the life. It's sort of like Noah in the ark and the pigeon.
Yeah. The life coming out of the desolation.
That's right. And we started seeing butterflies returning too. So in the springtime, or around Easter.
Yeah.
So when you start seeing the butterflies and the flowers, then you realize, wow, this is God's creation. It is, we use the word resilient a lot these days. Well, our houses aren't just bouncing back, but boy.
But nature is.
Nature is.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's also interesting driving around today. I mean, I don't know if you probably can't hear it on our microphone, but the sound of hammers,
generators,
there's a lot. It's good to see all the construction happening, but I mean, I think you even mentioned earlier how there's been like great partnerships between other ministries and churches.
Yeah.
Just talk about like the hopeful things that have come out of the tragicness of the Palisades fire.
Well, there's quite a few stories. I think one of the common denominators is new connections are being made. So you've got different community groups that are all of a sudden sharing a common story. So you have a shared narrative that we didn't have before. I mean, it's something we're all from this town. Well, now we're not just from this town, we lived through that fire. We lived through that common thing. So the concerns, the conversation has a focus, and right now that focus, as you can imagine, it's rebuild. We've got to rebuild, but that has been a real problem, and bureaucracy. So the idea of federal dollars going through the city versus coming directly to the people, the leadership in the local community, and that's been the challenge. There have been a lot of organizations that have raised a lot of funds for the local community, but it goes through, tiers of bureaucrats. And I think that has been frustrating to a lot of the folks because also, as an outsider myself, coming into this community, you realize, and the people will tell you, they don't all come from necessarily low wealth. So many of the people here are working to pay the mortgage. And it is a real challenge for these folks because of the stigmatism that, hey, they don't need help in the Palisades.
Yeah.
Well, they do need help because these people are paying to be here. And it is quite a burden for
Right
them.
up over there. So that's the Pacific Ocean, right?
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's beautiful here, but
yeah.
it is.
There's a story
Can't wrap
behind
my-
the story
Yeah.
for every family. And I guess that's a better way to describe. You just can't write the families off here as if
Yeah.
they don't need any help.
Yeah.
This is not something anyone would wish on anyone.
Yeah, they're going to back up. Yeah, it's California, and it's the most expensive zip codes, but yet nobody prepared to have their home burned down.
No way. I would say some of the big stories have to be around food. That's actually something interesting that has emerged in our congregation. When we started going to the Annenberg Beach House, the cafe would provide us with food. And then our members really got excited when we returned to our sanctuary on Palm Sunday. So we had a triumphant re-entry into the Palisades on Palm Sunday, and which was wonderful. So we were the first congregation to return to our sanctuary. But food has become a real big part of our gatherings and time together. And one lady even says, "Pastor, we just have to get knees under the table." And so,
Is that because you're
going to restaurants, I mean, we've been because we're not in our homes.
Yeah.
So we're always meeting at
I
restaurants.
mean, it's
we're
such
meeting
a
at
biblical
someone's.
thing. Break bread together.
That's what's going on.
Jesus in the Last Supper, and so
Yeah.
you guys were just forced to slow down.
Yeah, and so you're having meals with people you don't necessarily know.
Yeah.
New people that are gathered because you're meeting them in the hotels that you're staying in.
Oh, interesting.
So-
yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of there are a few people that are still in these hotels. So, and this is what 11 months later almost.
Yeah. I mean, there's another just wide open. I mean, home untouched, and then they've cleared it out, and who knows if they'll rebuild or what.
That's right.
How many? Remind me how many churches how many churches that were impacted or burnt down?
Sure. So there were 3 churches that completely burned down.
Okay.
The Presbyterian Church next to ours.
Yep.
The Historic Methodist Church. So when I say that we're in the Alphabet Straits, the Alphabet Straits stand for the theologians of the Methodist Church. So the Methodists founded the Pacific Palisades.
Oh, really?
It was an eccentric community, not just for the Methodists, but from what I understand, many of the refugees of the world wars, the Jewish community, settled down here. It was a really eccentric community. So the Methodist Church, the Historic Methodist Church burned completely down, and school. Corpus Christi, the Catholic Church, burned down with their school.
Yeah.
The Presbyterian Church, and then the Episcopalian Church, St. Matthew, some of the roof burned, one of the classroom buildings burned, and I do believe that the priests' homes burned, so maybe 2. All 3 rabbis lost their homes, except the synagogue remains standing. The traditional synagogue, the Shabbat, so the Reconstructionist synagogue next to our church, that one is standing, but the Shabbat, the more Orthodox one, that one burned completely down. Yeah.
How can people be praying for you, your church, and then the body of Christ here in the Palisades as they continue to rebuild?
Well, I think you were mentioning it earlier. We really have an opportunity to give. I think the challenge for us is going to be a prayer for wisdom as far as how we as a church body present, because you've got this duality of a challenge. On the one hand, you got to give people a sense of hope and promise. But on the other hand, you've got to console. So when the Bible says, rejoice with those who rejoice and mourn with those who mourn, that's hard to do when they're standing next to each other in the same church body. I mean, it's almost like you have to do both at the same time. It's a both-and approach. So
and that doesn't happen normally.
We need grace for that. Well, this is the only thing else I would say. We need prayer for our kids. Because think about it, the freshman kids during COVID are the seniors this year, and they all got displaced. So they had to deal with COVID, and then they had to deal with the fire.
Wow.
And I remember one young girl, what did she say? She drove past, there's two stories of two girls. One girl, they were praying and hoping they'd find their cat after the fire because they had to leave. They ran out of the house, they grabbed what they could, but Dad couldn't get the cat. And the girl, the daughter, was like, Dad, why didn't you get, and oh, cats, they find a way to survive. They haven't found their cat yet. So those are a lot of the stories. There was another girl who said, look, Mom, everything has happened in that house, all my memories. I'll never be able to come back and show my kids any of this. So I think the kids, that's what I would ask for. Prayers for our kids. Yeah. Well, in our people, especially the older community, they have photo albums.
Photo albums that they lost.
So all of those heirlooms, all of that stuff, we know that's not, it's not important. We can't take it with us, but at the same time, God gives us those things so that we can, cherish the gifts that He gives us in life.
Yeah.
And I think that's hard for people. Maybe some might resent or feel a great deal of loss.
What's your, have you been thinking about your sermon that you're going to do around the anniversary?
Okay, so we were thinking about an anniversary. Well, I think it's about a vision, how does that one verse go? About people without a vision will surely die or something?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think for us, that is what it's come to, because while we're still standing. That was one of the songs I wanted to play for the folks when we came back to the church. I'm still standing. Our church is still standing. And we say that with great humility and thankfulness. Yeah. But at the same time, I feel like, okay, we've been given an opportunity. We don't have to worry about the building, but we do have to worry about, why are we even bothering? What are we here for? What's the vision for reaching people with Jesus?
Yeah.
And your stuff, salt, light.
Salt and light, yeah.
How can we now we've got we've been given a window of grace where our church does not have to worry about some of those other Maslow hierarchy of needs things. We get to contemplate the Great Commission. What are we going to do about that? I think that's probably my appeal to the congregation on the anniversary.
That's awesome. Yeah. Well, that's a great way to end this video. Thank you so much for what you're doing in this community. And
we're blessed to be here. And thank you for coming to interview us.
Yeah, thank you.
Learn about our story.
Perfect.